Most people believe that winning requires a crowd cheering you on, a team backing you up, or approval from those around you. But let's pause for a moment. What if the greatest victories are born in silence? What if the most powerful growth happens not when we are surrounded, but when we are alone? You see, we live in a world where dependence on validation has become the norm. We wait for permission. We crave acknowledgement. But history shows us something different. The innovators, the leaders, the game changers, they weren't always surrounded by applause. Many of them walked a lonely road, made unpopular choices, and faced resistance. Yet, they still won. This isn't about isolation. It's about self-reliance. It's about building a mindset so strong that even when no one claps, you keep moving. Even when no one believes, you keep building. Because true victory is not about being seen, it's about becoming. So today, I want to challenge the way you think about winning. Not as a team sport, not as something that requires recognition, but as a deeply personal journey. One that sometimes you must do alone to truly win. When most people hear the word loneliness, they immediately think of emptiness, sadness, or a void that needs to be filled. But in reality, loneliness is often misunderstood. Being alone does not always mean being lonely, and being lonely does not always mean being weak. There is a difference between isolation and solitude, and when you learn to use solitude as a tool rather than fear it as a punishment, you begin to discover just how powerful it truly is. Loneliness can serve as the very environment in which you develop strength that no crowd, no applause, and no support system can provide. It is in the absence of external noise that you are forced to meet yourself, to hear your own voice clearly, and to wrestle with your own doubts and fears without distraction. When you are surrounded by people all the time, their opinions, judgments, and expectations begin to shape you more than your own instincts. But when you are alone, those external voices are silenced, leaving you with only your own. At first, that silence feels uncomfortable, even painful. You might crave company just to avoid hearing your own doubts echo. But that discomfort is the crucible of growth. It forces you to face your insecurities head on, to build resilience in the absence of comfort, and to learn that strength comes not from leaning on others but from standing tall by yourself. Loneliness becomes less about missing something and more about discovering something within you that you didn't know was there. Think about history's greatest leaders, innovators, and thinkers. Many of them spent long periods of their lives in solitude. Their strength didn't come from constant validation, but from developing the discipline to keep moving when no one was watching. When Thomas Edison was experimenting with thousands of failed attempts before creating the light bulb, no one was cheering for him. When Nikola Tesla, misunderstood and often dismissed, pursued his ideas, he had little encouragement from those around him. Yet, their solitude became the birthplace of ideas that changed the world. These examples show us that loneliness, when embraced as a teacher, can forge strength and resilience that no external support system could ever replicate. There is a kind of courage required to walk alone, to pursue a path without the comfort of companionship or approval. This courage doesn't just build strength, it builds identity. It teaches you who you are when there is no one else to define you. It reveals what you truly value when no one else is telling you what should matter. And it strengthens your resolve because every step forward is taken not out of pressure, but out of personal conviction. The muscle of self-belief grows stronger every time you take action without waiting for someone else to validate it. The irony is that loneliness often feels like a burden, but it is, in fact, a gift. It forces you to stop depending on others for strength and start generating it from within. That self-generated strength is unshakable because it doesn't rely on circumstances or people, it relies on you. When the world turns its back, when no one believes in your dream, when your journey feels deserted, It is in those moments that you learn the truth. Loneliness is not weakness, it is training. It is the forge where resilience, discipline, and self-trust are created. And those who embrace it discover a strength that no crowd could ever give them. The moment you decide to move differently, you will encounter resistance. People are comfortable with patterns, with routines, with predictability. When someone dares to step outside of what is considered normal, it unsettles others. It challenges their beliefs, it disrupts their sense of security, and so naturally, the reaction is often criticism, doubt, or outright opposition. This is why so many people give up when they first meet resistance. They misinterpret it as a sign that they are wrong, when in reality, it is often the clearest indicator that they are on the right path. The world has always pushed back against those who dared to move differently, but it has also always celebrated them once they succeeded. Think of the countless innovators, artists, and leaders who were dismissed or mocked in the beginning. When Galileo suggested that the earth revolved around the sun, he was ridiculed and condemned by the establishment. When the Wright brothers spoke about flying machines, people laughed at them. When people first heard about personal computers being available in every home, the idea was brushed off as impractical and unnecessary. In each of these cases, resistance was fierce. Yet, these individuals stayed the course, not because others believed in them, but because they believed in their vision. And the irony is, once they proved themselves, the same world that doubted them turned around and celebrated them as geniuses. Resistance is not proof that you are failing. It is proof that you are creating change. Nothing new has ever been accepted immediately, because newness demands a shift in thinking, and shifts in thinking take time. The key is not to avoid resistance, but to learn to expect it and even embrace it. When you face opposition, you are being given a chance to strengthen your conviction. Every objection you hear forces you to clarify your vision. Every doubt thrown your way is an opportunity to reinforce your belief in yourself. Resistance is the weight you lift in the gym of progress. It is the very thing that builds the strength you need to carry your dream forward. But here is the difficult part: resistance hurts. It can feel isolating. It can create moments where you wonder if maybe the critics are right, if maybe you are crazy for thinking differently. These moments test you because the human instinct is to seek approval and belonging. Going against the grain feels unnatural, but those who endure, those who push through the discomfort of standing alone, become the ones who redefine what is possible. The Wright brothers didn't just build an airplane, they built a new reality. Steve Jobs didn't just create devices, he changed how humanity connects. Each of these examples is proof that the world resists those who move differently until success forces everyone to see them in a new light. There is a lesson here that applies to anyone daring to chase a vision. Stop expecting applause at the beginning. The crowd is rarely there in the early stages, but the crowd always shows up when the results are undeniable. If you quit too early because of resistance, you rob yourself of the chance to be recognized later. The people who told you that you were wrong will eventually call you brilliant. The ones who laughed will eventually tell your story as an example of courage. But you only earn that transformation if you stay the course long enough to prove them wrong. So when the world resists you, remember that you are in good company. Every innovator, every leader, every pioneer faced the same. The resistance is not your enemy, it is your confirmation. It means you are doing something that matters, something that challenges the norm, something that might just change everything once you win. One of the greatest traps people fall into is waiting for validation before they act. They wait for someone to tell them they are good enough, ready enough, or worthy enough before they move forward. But the truth is, validation is optional. You do not need it to begin. You do not need it to continue. and you certainly do not need it to win. What you do need, without question, is discipline. Discipline is the quiet force that replaces the applause you think you need. It is the commitment to show up when no one is watching, to push forward when there is no recognition, and to stay the course even when you feel invisible. Validation may feel good, but it is fleeting. It depends on others, and others are unpredictable. They may praise you one day and criticize you the next. If your progress is built on their approval, your progress will always be fragile. Discipline, on the other hand, is reliable. It does not depend on mood, audience, or circumstance. It is a choice, repeated day after day, that builds consistency, and consistency is what produces results. A person who is disciplined can outlast the most talented individual who lacks self-control. Talent may give you a head start, but without discipline, talent stalls. With discipline, even the most ordinary effort becomes extraordinary over time. Look at athletes who train before dawn, writers who write before inspiration strikes, entrepreneurs who keep building even after hearing no 100 times. Their victories are rarely the result of constant encouragement. They are the result of a system, a rhythm, a set of habits that keep them moving forward. That system is discipline. Every repetition, every sacrifice, every boring, unglamorous action stacks up to create momentum. And the beauty of discipline is that it builds independence. When you are disciplined, you stop needing people to push you. You become self-sufficient, and that makes you unstoppable. The problem with relying on validation is that it gives others the power to determine your pace. If they approve, you go faster. If they doubt you, you slow down. This is a dangerous way to live, because it hands control of your future to people who may not even understand your vision. Discipline takes that control back. It says, even if no one believes in me, I will still do the work. It separates those who dream from those who achieve, because dreams without discipline remain fantasies, but discipline turns dreams into reality. There is also another truth: discipline builds confidence. When you prove to yourself that you can show up consistently, you begin to trust yourself more. Confidence does not come from compliments, it comes from evidence. And evidence is built in the small, daily victories of discipline. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, every time you complete a task you wanted to avoid, you accumulate proof that you can rely on yourself. That self-reliance becomes a shield against doubt and criticism. The journey of doing it alone and winning is not glamorous in the beginning. It is often quiet, repetitive, and unrecognized, but discipline is what makes that journey possible. Without it, you will be swayed by every opinion, discouraged by every setback, distracted by every shiny object. With it, you gain focus, resilience, and the ability to keep moving long after motivation fades. Validation might give you a moment of energy, but discipline gives you a lifetime of progress. That is why validation is optional, but discipline is essential. Silence is something most people try to avoid. We live in a world filled with constant noise, distractions, and voices competing for our attention. Phones buzz, notifications demand our response, and people around us always have opinions about what we should do or who we should be. But in all that noise, clarity is lost. It becomes difficult to hear our own thoughts, to understand what we truly want, and to connect with the ideas that could move our lives forward. That is why silence is not emptiness. It is a tool. When you embrace silence, you create space for clarity, and when you embrace solitude, you fuel creativity. Think of your mind like water. When it is stirred up, filled with noise, it is cloudy and hard to see through. But when the water is still, it becomes clear, and you can finally see what lies beneath. Silence does that for your mind. It removes the turbulence of external opinions and allows you to notice your own thoughts with greater depth. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in history were born not in crowded rooms, but in moments of solitude. Albert Einstein often spoke about how his best ideas came when he was alone, walking, or quietly reflecting. Writers, inventors, and leaders across time have valued solitude not as loneliness, but as fertile ground for creativity. In silence, ideas are able to breathe. In solitude, imagination has room to expand. When you are constantly surrounded by people, you are influenced by their beliefs, shaped by their fears, and often confined by their limitations. But when you step away and choose solitude, you give yourself the freedom to think without interruption. This is where original thought comes from. Not from repeating what others have said, but from allowing your mind to connect dots in ways that no one else has considered. Creativity is not about being louder. It is about going deeper, and that depth comes when you give yourself space to be still. At first, silence can feel uncomfortable, even unsettling. We are conditioned to fill quiet moments with noise because silence forces us to confront ourselves. It makes us listen to our doubts, our worries, and our fears. But in facing them, we begin to move past them. What was once uncomfortable becomes liberating. You start to notice that in silence, you are not as lost as you thought. You are actually more aware. In solitude, you discover that you are not alone with emptiness, you are alone with possibility. It is in these quiet spaces that direction becomes clearer. Decisions that once felt impossible begin to feel obvious. Paths that were clouded by too many opinions suddenly stand out with certainty. Silence gives you perspective that noise cannot provide. It slows down the pace of life just enough for you to reconnect with what truly matters. And when clarity emerges, action becomes more purposeful. You no longer chase distractions or waste energy proving yourself to others. Instead, you align with your own vision and begin to build something that is truly yours. Solitude also trains resilience. When you learn to spend time with yourself and still feel whole, you stop needing others to complete you. You stop fearing being alone and start using it as a resource. That independence is powerful because it allows you to step into the world without being shaken by rejection, criticism, or misunderstanding. You know how to return to your own quiet place and refuel. That ability to create from within, without external noise, is what makes you unshakable in a loud world. Silence sharpens clarity, and solitude fuels creativity. When you learn to embrace both, you no longer see being alone as weakness. You see it as power. You realize that in stillness, you can hear the loudest truth, your own voice, guiding you toward the path only you can walk. Trust is the foundation of every meaningful achievement, and before you can ask others to trust you, you must first learn to trust yourself. Many people never realize this because they are so used to looking outward for assurance. They want others to tell them their ideas are good, their efforts are worthwhile, and their future is promising. But if you cannot trust your own instincts, your own discipline, and your own resilience, no amount of external approval will ever be enough. Self-trust is the silent engine behind every victory. Without it, you hesitate. Without it, you second guess. Without it, you stop halfway, but with it, you keep moving even when the road is uncertain. Self-trust is built through consistency. Each time you keep a promise you make to yourself, you strengthen it. When you say you will wake up early and actually do it, when you decide to commit to a goal and follow through, you prove to yourself that your word has weight. Over time, these small acts accumulate into a deep sense of reliability. You begin to know that if you set your mind to something, you will follow through. That confidence does not come from motivational speeches or compliments from others. It comes from evidence, and evidence is built in daily choices. Think about people who achieve extraordinary success. They are not necessarily the most talented, nor are they always the most supported. What separates them is the ability to keep going despite doubt. Elon Musk was told repeatedly that his ideas for reusable rockets were unrealistic, but his self-trust allowed him to stay the course. Oprah Winfrey was told she didn't have what it takes for television, yet her self-belief carried her into becoming one of the most influential figures in the world. These stories are not about arrogance, they are about the quiet conviction that even if no one else believes, you must. The absence of self-trust is what causes people to quit too soon. When challenges appear, if you do not believe in your own capacity, you will look for reassurance outside. If that reassurance doesn't come, you will stop. But when you trust yourself, obstacles do not discourage you. They reinforce your determination. You stop needing proof before you act, because you already know that you are capable of figuring things out as you go. That shift in mindset turns challenges into training rather than threats. Building self-trust also means embracing failure as part of the process. Too often, people let failure shatter their confidence, when in fact, failure should strengthen it. Every time you fail but choose to rise again, you reinforce the belief that you are resilient. You teach yourself that setbacks are not the end, but a step. This ability to recover and keep moving makes you stronger than the person who has never failed, because your trust is not based on perfection, but on resilience. Another important part of self-trust is learning to silence comparison. When you measure yourself constantly against others, you start to doubt your own pace and your own path. But trust in yourself means knowing that your journey is unique. It means being secure enough to move at your rhythm, even if others don't understand it. This independence allows you to create authentically, without bending to trends or the pressure of expectations. In the end, self-trust is what frees you. It removes the need to chase approval, it gives you strength when encouragement is absent, and it provides clarity when the road is uncertain. It is the anchor that holds you steady when storms come, and the compass that points you forward when the path feels unclear. Every great victory is built on it, because no matter how many people stand beside you, if you cannot trust yourself, you cannot win. Winning alone is not just about proving yourself in isolation. It is about preparing yourself to step into leadership with strength and clarity when the time comes. The world often glorifies the moment of recognition, the applause, the visible success. But what truly shapes a leader is the time spent walking alone. Those quiet victories, the unseen struggles, and the discipline built in solitude become the foundation for influence when others finally join. Leading with impact does not start when you have followers. It starts when you have first led yourself. When you win alone, you learn how to depend on your own resourcefulness. You stop waiting for others to solve problems for you, and instead, you develop the creativity and resilience to figure things out yourself. That kind of independence is powerful because it teaches you not to panic when challenges appear. Instead, you face them with calm confidence, knowing that you have already survived difficulties without support. This self-reliance becomes the backbone of leadership because others naturally trust and follow someone who has proven they can stand strong without leaning on everyone around them. Another reason winning alone prepares you to lead is that it refines your vision. When you spend time building something in solitude, you are not distracted by endless voices pulling you in different directions. You learn what truly matters to you, what your non-negotiables are, and what values guide your decisions. So when people eventually gather around you, you are not swayed by every opinion. You lead with clarity. Great leaders are not those who simply listen to the loudest voices, but those who stand firmly rooted in their vision while guiding others forward. That strength comes from time spent alone, building conviction without external validation. Winning alone also humbles you. When you walk a lonely road, you understand the weight of sacrifice, the sting of rejection, and the discipline it takes to keep moving when no one notices. This humility prevents arrogance when success arrives. Leaders who have struggled alone rarely take their followers for granted, because they remember what it felt like to have no one. That memory makes them compassionate, empathetic, and more connected to the people they eventually lead. Their impact is deeper because it is not just about achievement, it is about shared humanity. In addition, the process of winning alone sharpens your ability to make decisions under pressure. When you do not have a team to consult, you are forced to rely on your judgment. At first, this feels risky and uncertain, but over time it builds decisiveness. You learn to weigh options, trust your instincts, and take responsibility for outcomes. These are the exact qualities required of impactful leaders. A leader who cannot make decisions paralyzes progress, but one who has already practiced this skill alone can lead with confidence when others are depending on them. Finally, winning alone prepares you to inspire. People are drawn not to perfection, but to authenticity. When they see someone who has fought battles in silence, who has endured resistance and yet risen, they feel hope for themselves. Your journey of solitude becomes a story that others connect with, because everyone knows the feeling of being alone. By overcoming it and winning, you show others that it is possible. Your leadership carries weight not because of titles or authority, but because of the example you set. So when the time comes that others finally join you, you are not just someone who achieved success. You are someone prepared to lead with resilience, clarity, humility, decisiveness, and inspiration. The work you did alone becomes the reason you can now make an impact with others. Winning alone is not the end of the story. It is the preparation for the moment when your victory becomes bigger than yourself.